Hi, I'm Jeremy Kirk with Intel 471, and this is Studio 471, our regular monthly podcast on cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence. Over the last several years, threat actors have conducted cryptocurrency thefts and data breaches on a wide scale. They come from a community of threat actors known as COM, which is short for community, and they continue to cause headaches today. Law enforcement and private companies, however, have been intensely investigating them to uncover their real world identities and also have made some arrests. With me to talk about these efforts is Michael Fletcher. Michael is a former cybercrime technical analyst with the Australian Federal Police. Thanks for coming along, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's just start with your background. How did you get into tech and policing, and how did you get into investigating cybercrime?
I have no idea. Pure luck. I fell backwards into it. No, I was working for a tech company out of uni, just doing secure web gateways. The company at the time said cloud wasn't the future, so that's where we were at. The cloud was never going to be a thing, and I saw a job that came up for digital forensics at the federal police at one point. I applied for it. I waited about a year, and then I ended up in digital forensics, and then one day got approached by the cybercrime team. They said, "Do you want to come try out cybercrime? It's pretty low stress. We only get one or two investigations a year." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds good." And that was a lie.
It's certainly
Uh,
changed.
yeah, yeah. So that was roughly just before the 20, what was it, the 20th of September, 2022, where there was a pretty big hack in Australia, and everything in cybercrime changed. So yeah, just been around doing tons of investigations, and that's what we were doing. We just had to work it out. We were surrounded by really talented people, and I ended up being a cybercrime analyst.
And so, today, like the online threat landscape for companies is fairly treacherous. And like I said in the intro, we're going to talk a little bit about what's kind of known broadly as the COM. Um, what online communities gave rise to these groups of threat actors?
Yeah, so the com, and for any researchers or anyone actually in the field, pretty much everyone knows the com links back to the original group, which was the scene. The scene is a throwback way before we had Discord and Telegram, right? Scene is the original guys back on IRC chat, 2010, pre 2010. Young kids, some older guys that probably acted as mentors back then. But you're talking just text chat essentially, and a group of guys that found each other in different ways. So there were some that, if you talk to them, talking about their experience as to how they got into it back then, some of them knew people in real life. So there was a very big US nexus. These were a community of people that knew each other in real life. Some guys joined the scene through Minecraft. So playing
Yeah.
on Hypixel Minecraft servers, right? A very particularly famous Hypixel server. And then you had guys that were getting on there from forums. And this isn't, breach forums or raid forums or, that we know today. We're talking forums like normal internet forums where there was a miscellaneous chat. There was definitely one guy who got in there from bodybuilding.com. That has nothing to do with it, right? But there was just some random thread or random comment, and that's how they came into the group. So the pathways into it were extremely varied,
Yeah.
from high school associates to Minecraft.
And we know that like 5 or more years ago, this community was focused mostly on harassing each other, right? Like they were stealing short usernames from like Discord and Instagram from each other, doing other social engineering schemes to cheat people out of those usernames. There's like cheating at games, and of course the cryptocurrency thefts, right? And but this kind of sector stayed kind of outside the bounds, right? This wasn't on the radar of enterprise companies until recently when they started to move into serious, mass data theft, extortion, and ransomware. When would you pinpoint when that started to change and why?
So if you took a viewpoint from what currently exists in media and reporting, there's two or three journalists in the whole world who have probably got a really good scope on the actual stories behind this. And you'll see them because they've been reporting on this for longer than it has been an actual issue, right? Or, and when I say actual issue, I mean big companies getting hit. The financial impact is huge. They're making headlines, right? Which is, by the way, a lot of what they want is the headline. They This links back way further, way further. And when you're talking about in these groups that were doing this in 2010, and you talked about the username theft, right? So we go all the way back to OG user, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
User.com forum. That was a huge nexus for a lot of guys in this group, or particular members of this group. So there's very heavy attachments to their usernames, like you mentioned. And it did start with that, compromising and obtaining rare usernames. So you wanted to get, your 2-letter, 3-letter accounts on Twitter, Xbox, any platform you could get it on, Twitter at the time. And so there was, learning this craft pretty much as a game, because prior to OG user, there was no financial benefit in having the usernames. The benefit was simply having the usernames, right? You wanted to be that guy everywhere. And if your community is digital, so you have IRC chat, that's a digital, group of friends that you log on to every day. You guys could talk about stuff, you could learn coding. It was this awesome, friendship and community that became literally called the scene. And if you talk to guys that were in it, they talk about it with pure nostalgia, right? There were some bad things that happened. Nostalgia. If your whole life and community is online and then you get known as a username online, very valuable. If I can elaborate, and cut me off anytime, to kind of keep going with your question, those usernames were super valuable. You want to get them, then you learn you've got a group of guys in these IRC chats that then they for a time went to Ventrilo, they were on Matrix, they were on Discord. As it evolved, you are around people with all of these valuable usernames. OG user pops up where you can sell usernames for quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then suddenly a lot about these guys. You hang out with them, they're your friends, and you know how to socially engineer them. You know what accounts they have, potentially how to steal them. So you start seeing theft against each other, stealing the usernames and listing them online. And for anyone who doesn't understand, when I say like a username is valuable, Kanye West bought at YE, I think it was 250,000 US dollars,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's usernames that have sold for more. So imagine being one of those guys back in the day who had that username and had it stolen off you,
Mm.
and you see it sold for $10,000, $20,000, which is a lot of money if you're young. There's a lot of hostility that can come out of that, right? A
Yeah. But
lot
it's
of
kind of a training
grudges.
ground, right? Is it like a training ground for social engineering?
It
Yeah.
100% is.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're learning to do this for fun. It wasn't for money originally. It was just to get those names. You're learning all of the craft you need to social engineer someone into getting details off them, into getting past their 2-factor authentication. You're looking up their phone numbers. You're working out, oh, well, I need their phone number to access that Minecraft account to then change the details. How can I impersonate that number? And then we got SIM swapping, right? So you don't have to search very far to then ask someone, how do I SIM swap? What does that mean? What do you mean? And they're like, well, you just, you impersonate them to the telecom and you get them to switch the number to a new card. And they're like, oh, so I can just take that number. And you're like, yeah.
And we should explain like that the point of this is to be able to get that 2-factor code if it's sent over SMS, which a lot of providers now have moved away from because this is dangerous. But
Yep.
5 years ago,
Everyone
and
was doing it.
and beyond that, everyone was doing it, and it really took advantage of those some weaker protocols at telecommunications companies, and they had large numbers of customer service representatives too that were could be targeted to potentially do this,
Yep.
and and it resulted in a lot of cryptocurrency thefts then subsequently too,
Right. So
didn't it?
look at that adaptation from that culture of simply doing it for the clout, the username, the online presence, to then having a marketplace where you can sell the usernames, but then going, So everything I'm doing here, I've learned to social engineer someone, hang out in their community, get to know them, find out enough details about them. So doing OSINT on them. You've got kids on Discord, young guys, very talented guys, some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And then you're like, well, these are the same protections. This is two-factor authentication for cryptocurrency accounts. This is two-factor authentication for email, for their Microsoft accounts, for their work accounts, for their sensitive data storage system accounts, right? So when you said providers have moved away from the two-factor authentication with phone numbers, yeah, sure, we have in a way, but
Over
in order,
SMS. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but a lot of people haven't, and a lot
Yeah.
of people don't have two-factor on, which we found out last year.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But
So
the same system to steal that username on Minecraft is the same way that you can engineer and research and find the right target to call up who's an administrator of a system at a company to steal and extort data.
yeah, yeah. And what would you, I guess, sort of mark why there was a transition from just sort of kind of like stealing from each other, and then it was kind of like, oh, targeting, big holders of cryptocurrency, who had talked about their holdings on social media, right? Kind of made some personal operational security failures, and then ended up getting targeted by these threat actors. But then we've seen them attack, enterprise systems like data warehousing systems, CRM systems through a lot of this understanding, taking the time to understand exactly how these systems are architected and protected. Why do you think that shift happened?
So anecdotally, and this is a lot of investigations. I've met a few of these young men professionally. That's what we'll leave it as. But when you look at it, they almost look like black swan events. So you go, well, they're going after crypto, they're going after high earners, they're going after CRMs. These don't make sense how they're all linked. How can the same group, the same community, all be associated with this? And it's because it's not one static community, it's not one static group. It is a whole mishmash of interests, right? Skill sets. So you're hanging out on a Discord server, an IRC chat, and this happened back in the IRC days. Was some guys like, well, I've worked out a way to mess around with SIM cards, right? I know a way to like move a number onto another SIM card. And back in this 2010, pre 2010, that was very niche. That was a
Yeah.
very, and so people go, oh, that's really cool. Like, how do you do that? What, whatever. But one guy in the chat goes, oh, that means I can steal my friend's number and take his Minecraft account, right? So there's people that bring a skill set to it, to the chat. They're just doing show and tell, right? Because the biggest thing in this community is like, look what I did. This is my name. Look what I did. Know me for it.
Yeah.
And then you had your groups who were like, this is our group. This is what we do. Know us for it. And then they go
Mm.
on Twitter. Twitter has a graveyard archive of like, which group are we going to talk about? Lizard Squad, Money Team, back in the day, right? Search the tag, like RIU, rest in undoxability or rest in undoxable, whatever. Of these guys just openly talking about doing pretty significant hacks when you look back historically.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, bring it back to your question, when we're looking at how can they be doing this whole spectrum of crime, it's because there's so many of them. This isn't a group where it's like we are always the same group. We pull in skill sets when we need them. Oh, that guy in IRC talked about knowing how to SIM swap. Let's bring him in. He can help us here. I have an interest in targeting this exchange. I know a vulnerability in the exchange. I have an insider threat at this exchange. I have
Yeah.
an avenue. So I know these guys on this chat. I'm going to bring them into my group and we're going to do this theft, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is literally just sometimes pure chaotic chance that someone has an interest in it or someone saw the value in what someone knew how to do and they just go, let's try this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish it was a better answer, but it is really a lot of what happens. And this is from the horse's mouth. Yeah.
I think I saw one time that there was a presentation by the FBI, and they described that there was probably like maybe 1,000 people that could be kind of in this sphere, but only maybe a single digit percentage were ones of kind of labeled sort of higher skill. But there's a variety of skills, aren't there, recently? Because there was one threat actor who was arrested recently and charged, and his specialty was just basically social engineering and talking people into things, into doing things that were against their organization's interests, right? And he sounded older than his age, and he just had a really confident sort of way of speaking. No technical ability at all, which I thought was quite interesting. Where you do have other threat actors who are, building some custom tools and scripts and are capable of doing other things, aren't there?
100%. There are some incredibly wickedly talented guys in that group, and this is, when I say this, sometimes people get a bit weird that a ex-law enforcement person might talk almost in a way of praise about certain actors, but you have to respect, if you see talented people, regardless of if they're doing crime or not, you have to know they're talented, right? And some of these guys, unbelievable, right? Like they had orders when they were in prison that they couldn't be within a certain distance of an electronic device unsupervised because
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
like, there was 1,000 ways, even if they just got near a terminal, right? Just a deployed terminal, they might be able to manipulate that to get access. We had very famously a young man who had an Amazon Fire Stick in a hotel room while under, law enforcement supervision, and he kept going. You have these, incredibly, where there's been two occasions in my career where I've met two young individuals where when you meet them, you just know there's no other people like this that do what they
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and you
And,
can't deny that percentage, is real.
yeah.
It's a
But
small
it
percentage.
leads me to another question that I have for you too, of like just the fact that like a lot of these people don't seem to be deterred even by the arrests of their peers. And as you pointed out, ones that have been arrested and then released go straight back at it again, which I find is kind of fascinating in a sort of, I guess, you would think self-preservation would kick in at some point. So what do you think is going on behind in the brains of these people?
Again, this is a guess. This is anecdotal, and there's always, guys in the group sometimes reach out to. Don't try to reach out to me, please. I'm not inviting it, but a lot of stories or perspectives about how things went down or how things are or why they're that way. I've, I'm talking over 50 of these guys that I've interacted with. So uh, there are definitely members that get arrested and they do their time and they're like, I'm good, right? They go
Hmm.
have a different life because they go into prison, they find out what consequences are, but it's not the prison, it's not the sentencing that does it. It's kind of like, okay, so that was a cool run. There was this mania that we were involved with because we were surrounded by a community, an echo chamber of people that were like, when one of them got arrested, the one that got arrested wasn't still in the echo chamber. The rest of the community was like, yeah, we're going to keep going. We're undoxable, right? That's why the RI, hashtag RIU exists. These guys were like, we will never be caught. We're never going to get caught. We're never going to get attributed.
Hmm.
And so you stayed in that community as the unarrested person and you kept going in that mania of like, we're making money, we're doing cool stuff, we're getting away with things. And there's a huge rush to that, right?
Sure.
That is addictive. You are a young person with access to money you shouldn't have access to. So you're talking drugs, you're talking, they're buying things with crypto online. So it's not like they can have, the younger guys that live with their parents, they have no parental intervention because they can't see what they're buying. You can get a fake postal address box that you can go pick things up from. You can pay with Bitcoin. You can convert to Monero. We just saw
Yep.
some exchanges harden their KYC. One exchange in Canada got hit with a very big fine for lots of money laundering activity recently. But you I think that when you have this community feeding you this idea that you won't get done, uh, it's intoxicating.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and, and the proof to the opposite of it, most human beings live their life going, that won't happen to me. And as you get older or you experience those things when you're younger, you go, oh, damn. Okay, like I'm not untouchable. I'm not, on God mode. I don't have access to a console that keeps me fortunate forever. But until you meet those consequences, the community you're in can be very misleading and they can
And
get you in a lot
it's
of trouble.
It's really double-edged too, though, isn't it? It's like not only do you have law enforcement and private companies on your case, right? So you have a lot of talented threat researchers, but you also have your own peer community frequently doxing you as well. And this happens all the time.
Yeah.
We see the doxes pop up on forums of, people attributing other threat actors as certain individuals, and it takes some investigation to figure out if those are accurate. Sometimes they can be confirmed, sometimes they can't. But yeah, it's just quite a dicey world, isn't it?
Yeah. And that comes back to, the questions you've been going through. And so you guys know this is not planned. Jeremy's probably got some 4D chess planning here, but it does tie in really well with, I guess, what you were asking at the start. When we're talking about the usernames and that small community where you're around with your friends and you realize you could steal their usernames, you could do these tricks on them, you can get access to their Minecraft accounts. When you find out your account's been stolen by your friends, you're going to go, oh, well, I know this guy does crime. He's been doing SIM swapping. I'm going to release his details online, but I can't tell police who he is or why I know it because I'm also doing the crime. I'm also, right? There's repercussions for me. So what I'm going to do is make a username that's not associated with me on Doxbin or RiseUp or, I
Yeah.
don't know. I think Hack the Planet had a pad as well, but we used to have pad dot whatever website, and that's where you dropped all your information and you had a unique link. Then you had Doxbin and you dox them and you say, this is what they do. Here's screenshots of them and here's chats. And, that doxing culture exploded as well because that was the way to get them in trouble. And for a lot of these guys, there are very famous doxers where that led to serious arrests. And I kid you not, one of them, I think an individual got 12 years. That was over $500.
Yeah. Wow. Oh,
$500. And that guy was doxed by his associate, 12 years in prison.
yeah.
It's vicious. So you're in a community of people that will encourage you. You'll never get caught. It doesn't matter. But at the same time, $500 is the price to throw you under the bus.
And I wanted to talk just in general about attribution of how important is attribution and also like how difficult is it these days to figure out who somebody is anonymous online? How difficult is it to figure out their real world identity?
Uh, so
Or easy sometimes.
no. So it's never easy, but the thing is, it's not that it's easy or hard. It's not binary like that. It is taxing. It is not something that is incredibly advanced. And I've over time in my previous job had a team of guys that came in, and you can teach people how to do this, right? You can show people how to think. The thing is that it's labor intensive, it's taxing. You have to really want to do it. So some researchers, and this is a known fact in the community, but no CTI researcher will ever admit it, is some people are very motivated by a huge justice complex. And it's this thing of like, I just have to, for whatever reason, this person's caught my attention and I must remediate it and I'm going to hunt them and attribute them to the end of the earth. A lot of law enforcement analysts are that archetype. So it's not vengeance, but it's like a fixation that they will not stop. So they will
Yeah.
always want to find a way to attribute the person. It is more a personality trait to be able to attribute than it is the tools to attribute. When
Mm.
you're in government, everyone always says you have cheat codes. It's You don't need the cheat codes. You can do most of it on the open internet. It takes time and a lot of mental health
Yeah.
Lots of therapy and a lot of catching up on sleep sometimes after it's done. But it's not easy. It's not hard. It's taxing.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about just kind of defense. We've seen some attacks, like there was one last year against the big data warehousing company, where the threat actor had just basically sourced credentials from various info stealers, stuff on the market. Accounts weren't protected by MFA. This pretty low-hanging fruit, but it actually led to massive data stores that were held by big companies. This year we've seen the raiding of Salesforce CRM systems for various companies through the theft of OAuth tokens that were used by a AI chatbot agent too. We don't know exactly how those OAuth tokens were protected or stored, but again, it's like what stands out to me. It's like really often identity access management systems, right? The com was really focused on phishing too, lighten up a phishing site just for an hour against a target, on their targeting, sending SMS links to the phone, and sometimes taking advantage of things like push fatigue and things like that. But again, these aren't software vulnerabilities. As we say traditionally, these are weaknesses in the, IAM procedures of various organizations. So what stands out to you at least of like, okay, if I'm worried about this group, which goes by 100 different names, what do I do? What do I need to be worried about, right? What do I need to be focused on? And if they target me, is it going to be inevitable that they get in, or is there stuff that I can do to like at least slow this down to get a little bit of warning because they move very fast, don't they? When they're
Definitely. So the big things, and this is a very big discussion that's happening at companies all over the world since last year, right? And the stuff that we saw with Salesforce this year was a reinforcement for that conversation that never ended for these board members, for these CISOs, which is there is a massive risk with offshoring all of our infrastructure, our BPO services, everything that major, very asset-rich companies have offshored. That's the target now. That's the supply chain. And if you look at a number of hacks in the last 18 months, they are all to do with BPOs, right? So it's all business providers. Uh, you're looking at a very popular social media chat application online. I just don't know who I should mention, who I should not. So let's vaguely point to it. They're being
Yeah,
extorted online. That's gone a bit quiet. Again, this is all BPOs, right?
yeah,
So we know the BPOs they're getting done. The companies know that too, because you have two weak links at those offshore service providers. The first weak link is that their social engineering training, that's not a priority, right? Over there,
yeah,
it's a very different world for them. They are very focused on internal integrity, internal security practices at those offices. I've been to those offices offshore, Thailand, Malaysia, throughout
yeah,
Southeast Asia. They're very incredibly well run. This is not a jab at those companies. They have, retina scanners and fingerprint scanners when you go in for the employees, so you can't impersonate the employee. But then there are factors with those employees that you can't account for, one of them being extortion. So
yeah,
all it took for a very, very significant compromise this year was the extortion of one offshore employee. Their family was threatened, right? All by this group that we're talking about, just some of their skilled associates who do this thing.
yep,
Uh, and once that person was extorted, they were sold access to that extorted employee. And then the employee does things like unlock particular accounts for them. Not even escalate privilege. You're talking about, hey, I've gotten into a cryptocurrency account, and there's a road bump system. 72 hours, you log in, new device, you can't transfer. Take that
yep,
off. That's it, right? And then you lose $10 million. So the extortion's worth it. That whole attack on the supply chain is worth it. So for companies that looking at that risk of their offshore, widening their risk assessments to not be, well, we've offshored that function, therefore we've de-risked ourselves. You
yeah,
have, you've just grown your risk map,
Do you
much
think,
bigger.
what would you say to parse the differences here if it was onshore, as in the same country, and you just hired, domestic, workers to work on that? Wouldn't the same threat exist?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. So when you look at well, your risk map grew, that's not saying, oh, okay, well, if we just get rid of offshoring, that's the solution. It's not.
Mm,
Um, this is for every company to decide it. This is definitely not my expertise as to how they approach that. But what I can
sure.
say is your internal systems, when you have things like look at how many layers deep it goes where a human is able to unlock something, escalated privilege. So, how many systems are human proof and how many systems are automatically irreversible checks? So, the longer a chain of human interactive interaction requirement to get approval, 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 approval. So, remove that speed bump from that account, let them transfer. All of that is human handled.
Yeah.
You have a weakness. Humans are the weakness for social engineering. So, you have to have a balance of systems that lock out and humans that lock out, and it shouldn't be the same humans doing the first two actions, then an automated system, then it should go to a different team or person. That's how you break social engineering attacks. Is there's not one person who goes do these two things, then I'm going to go to this system, have that turned off, do these two human things, but it's always the same person.
Yeah.
You're a golden target, right?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and if I can add one more in, uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
sorry, welcome to my monologue bit. We have a practice that is getting traction. It was a thing, I think, a bit of a buzzword a few years ago, which was the gold team, right? So you had your red teams, your blue teams, your purple teams in companies, and then you had your gold team, which was protecting, your executive or specific assets. And I think at the time when gold teams came up, it did get caught in the buzzword world where they were like, well, we're going to protect executives. And it became, well, that's an expense. That's a luxury, right? So at your banks, you have gold teams, you have, those teams turn into buy access to every threat intel company and then just put your executives on a list and hope their credentials don't turn up.
Yeah.
Then we went, oh, why don't we do this for all employees? That makes sense. I think the next step where the gold team was right is you have almost like penetration testing companies for your employees, for their credentials, their backgrounds while they're employed, not when you first employ them, because then you're
Mm,
saying to HR, hey, can you be responsible for finding out everything about these 500 people you employ every year. And I bet you're going to do that thoroughly. And I bet you don't have KPIs to get your employees in quickly. And, like their job is the vetting is less important than what they're hired to do.
yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have companies just like pen testers, and you go, hey, we just want to do a random run. Can you check if any of my employees are involved in criminality online? Can you do um, check their social medias, check their backgrounds, check their associates, and you're doing social penetration testing against your own companies, but
Mm,
also against contractors you're working with. There are companies out there who are fully positioned to do this and are doing this, but we don't think about it as like that. We think of it as a luxury, or it might be a bad thing for our employees. But look at the damage being
yeah.
done right now.
Yeah.
So you should be checking for your credentials being phished, your people being targeted online, but also checking your people. And there are some researchers out there that will hear this and see this, and hopefully one person in particular I know will see this and go, "Amen." I've been screaming this
Yeah.
forever. Um, I don't know if I can mention her, but her is enough, I think. These we have to focus on our people and don't assume our people are innocent. Don't assume that our people can't be targeted, and don't
Yeah.
say that that can't happen to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a long
Was that-
rant. Apologies.
It's all right. As a final question, and I know this is a subject that's dear to your heart. I want to ask about public-private collaboration because you've been a really big advocate for this, particularly because as when we talk about, trying to figure out real-world IDs and attribution, a lot of different companies and organizations have a little bit different picture on intelligence, right? And have a little bit of something to contribute. And you've been a big advocate of kind of bringing these communities together. So, how critical is that collaboration, firstly? And then how can you characterize how has it improved then, since you've been, since you were in the police?
Yeah. Look, let's go back 3 years. I was having conversations very early on with people, and the the friction in the air going, public companies talking to private and going, "Hey guys, we can work together." And you knew as law enforcement, the friction in the air that you could feel was like, yeah, but the second we tell you we have this data or we have access to this thing, you're gonna serve a warrant on us straight away. It's a tale as
Right.
old as time. We've seen it everywhere. I got to stop doing hand gestures. It's making my camera move. So sorry about that. You'll have to just frame it slightly. But then I think the big thing and the big change for public and private was traditionally government has always been like, we're the big dog, and if we ask, you tell, right? And anyone in a relationship like that, in any other dynamic in their life, knows that's you don't get the best result from
Yeah.
that. And what you end up having is, I kind of took a chance, at some conferences, and people were very aware of my non-online presence, but approach to this, and I appreciate you kind of talking about it, was I said, well, why don't we try where we say private sector is the client, right? Because they actually have all the data. They actually have the most talented people. They can afford the most talented people. There are very few governments in the world, any agencies in the world that can afford all the tools that they need. That is not a
Sure.
any agency, not even my employer. I'm saying government agencies can't afford everything. They can't. They have budgets. And so you have to then go, well, if the best people are all there and the data we want for intelligence is there and they're getting attacked, they're the victim, how is this not a win for everyone? If we say, hey guys, let's work together. What if I thought
Yeah.
it was the client and I go, we saw the data go there. Where did it go after that? Right.
Yeah.
We just need to know we've got to test 1,000 hypotheses. And I say we, previously, um, as to what might have happened. And you have companies that are like, well, I just saw a $4 million extortion attempt. I just saw a company's stock price drop, what, $500 million. Maybe we have a synergy here, and
Yeah.
we can all start talking, and we can get intel pictures because there's one analyst at one company somewhere, and every threat intel company has this person. And if they ever see this clip, they're going to send it to them and go, oh, this is that person who just goes so hard. They're so in the weeds. They know so much about this threat actor. It's their whole life. They've been doing it for years. And that person goes, oh, well, it's not years. Oh, yeah, no, it's been 3 years. Yeah. And when you talk to them, they have this collection of stuff that never made the report. It never needed to be published. They were too worried to tell governments because they thought, oh, I'm maybe not allowed to do that. Like,
Yeah.
tell me a threat intelligence person that a law enforcement have come after when they've
Yeah.
been like, hey, I bought this domain because I saw it was unregistered and this botnet's been sending, 500,000
Right.
requests to
Ex-
it. And you don't turn around and go, oh, well, clearly you're the criminal, right?
Yeah.
You go, sweet, like, let's have a look. And once we started doing that and giving people this avenue of going, hey, like, we actually want to work together. Yeah, we know you've been ransomed. We know most governments in the world know that there are far more ransom payments going on than is reported, right? And ransom victims are still thinking, if I tell the government I paid a ransom, I'm going to get arrested or fined, right? That would be
Yeah.
the literal equivalent of if someone went to a police station and said, my car's been broken into, and they go, well, why did you let them do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's not fixed in reality at all. Um, if you open up avenues for people to come to you and say, "Hey, I kind of saw something, but like, it's not. I don't know what it is. Do you want to look at it?" And you go, "Yeah." And every link, every piece of the puzzle falls together.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, it's a united effort, and that is because what the group that we've talked about today, that they don't just do cybercrime, right? They do
Yeah.
other things which we've talked about offline.
Yeah.
And you need an army, you need a village to
Yeah,
take.
and I've seen, there are online communities, trust groups that are pretty amazing, that have representatives from lots of different organizations that are sharing, really fresh threat intelligence and TTPs, IOCs, and that's because it's hard-won trust because everybody knows that they're not going to, sort of burn each other. I mean, there's always kind of a community or not community an attitude of like, oh, I've got to keep this stuff, with me. And now that's seems to be changing, right? And it seems to be benefiting others as well. But it's very delicate, isn't it? Like,
Yeah. So a big thing, a lot of those trust groups get shut down. So like a big fact in the US, for example, there is no police intelligence. Like, so if something's collected, if they know about something, it's in disclosure, right? And every US agency I've ever worked with, they're elite operators, but they don't mess with that, right? They buy the
mm,
book, they do everything to a T, to the point it's exhausting, and you're like, man, you guys, but they're trained like incredibly well to do that within their system. But you have these trust groups online that maybe can't always involve law enforcement for that reason, because in different countries the rules are different, right?
yeah,
We're not talking about collaboration without integrity. We're talking about you have to do it by the books in the powers that you have. In Australia, we were very lucky. We have incredible capabilities like that, still do. Um,
mm,
your trust groups are as good as the people, as good as the trust that's in them. And then you have to find appropriate avenues to reach out to the people you want to get it to, which is also where particular members of public can help,
yeah,
depending on what country you're from, uh, to create those avenues, facilitate that. And honestly, private sector will do half the job. They'll slam dunk a case for you if you just give them, safety.
yeah.
Yeah.
Terrific. Michael Fletcher, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me ramble. I appreciate it.